Welcome to Not Another PD, the podcast for helping professionals who are over dull trainings and death by slideshow workshops. I'm Jazmin Purcell, social worker, coach, supervisor, and self-proclaimed boundaries queen. Each week, you'll hear real, honest conversations, sometimes solo, sometimes with expert guests. Think insider perspectives, practical takeaways, and a focus on your well-being, not just how you show up for clients. This podcast is about you, the human behind the caseload, the human behind the profession. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Episode 17. In today's conversation, we'll explore why awareness alone isn't always enough, how old safety patterns keep showing up in our work and relationships, and what changes when we start leading from self-trust instead of self-protection. Today, I'm joined with Bree. Bree Coulter is the creator of the Shift Method, a neuroscience-backed process that helps people move beyond limiting beliefs and fear-based perceptions that keep them stuck. Her work focuses on restoring congruence, aligning who you are inside with how you show up in the world. Through her signature neuro-limbic conditioning approach, Bree helps high-achieving, emotionally intelligent individuals break free from patterns of overthinking, people-pleasing, and self-doubt so they can lead from clarity and self-trust instead of fear. Welcome, Bree. I'm so thrilled that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're very welcome. And Bree, for those who are meeting you for the first time and are not already familiar with your amazing work, can you share a little bit more about your background and what led you into this kind of work that you do now?
Of course. So I actually spent years chasing success, probably a lot like a lot of helping professionals out there, thinking that it would make me feel like I was enough. So from the outside, it looked like drive, but internally it was a lot of pressure, and I would drown myself in my work to avoid my problems waiting for me at home. If I had a bad day, stay later at work. If I was bored, innovate someone's business. If I wasn't okay, I'd work extra hard. And I didn't have that work-life balance by choice, basically. And I had no boundaries for myself. That's why you're here, isn't it, Jazmin?
Yes.
That approach, I guess, made me a top performer everywhere, but that didn't necessarily mean that I was valued where I was. And it's the same as people pleasing, just looks a little different. Instead of it coming from friends and family, I was doing it for people who saw me as just another number, and I was completely replaceable. So growing up, I actually had pretty severe abandonment wounds. So that kind of work actually felt really familiar. I knew how to stay half in, half out, connected enough to contribute, but detached enough, I guess, to protect myself. But over time, though, all of that starts to take its toll. You grow colder, more distant, and the longer you play those wounds out in different formats, the more disconnected you start to feel from yourself. I wanted out of that rut, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And I tried everything that I could think of, anything that anyone could throw at me, but it just was not working. And it ate away at me until pretty much I developed my own framework, which is what I call the Shift Method. That helped me to change my entire life. It allowed me to finally breathe authentically from who I was on the inside, actually matched how I was showing up on the outside. And when everyone around me was struggling, I offered to use my framework to help them, and it worked. And eventually I ended up on podcasts and built a business that ran purely from referrals for 4 years without even social media. So the results actually spoke for themselves.
That's fantastic. I can't wait for you to tell us more about it. And you've mentioned that this framework that you've created really helps you, and you commonly work with a lot of high achievers, including many helping professionals who've already done, the therapy, the courses, all the coaching, the supervision. They've read countless books, but they're still feeling stuck. So how would you describe your Shift Method and what kind of change does it support for your clients and even for yourself?
Yeah, the Shift Method is the process that I created, which helps hundreds of people every single year clear out the stuff that's running underneath the show. All of those limiting beliefs, the negative thought patterns, the emotional highs and lows that keep you stuck cycling in repeat cycles. So it's not exactly about like changing your mindset or forcing yourself to think positive. It's about teaching your brain how to finally feel safe enough to let go of what it's been holding on to, so you can actually live from a steady baseline instead of swinging between burnout and motivation or calm and chaos. Most people that I already work with, they know why they do what they do. They have a pretty good understanding, either fear of failure or fear of rejection or whatever it is. But they've often invested in a lot of alternative therapies or events before, but they still feel powerless to their reactions or their emotions. Shift helps to change all of that.
Makes sense. And what does shift stand for?
Subconscious healing and identity fracture transformation.
Wow. Even just hearing that, it makes me so intrigued. So many helping professionals, they know what to do. They may have the insight, because of their own professional training and background, but they actually still find themselves repeating the same old patterns. Why do you think we, despite the fact that we know better, keep repeating these same old patterns that don't serve us, whether it's the people pleasing you mentioned or some of those other patterns?
I love this question. So, patterns repeat because the brain doesn't run on what you find logical. It runs on past data, on what's the familiar known. So, you can have every tool, every bit of awareness, but if your brain still believes that the old way is safer, it's going to keep pulling you back to that, right? So, here's what I like to call the red car theory. So if I told you to drive down the road and I said, whatever you do, don't look for any red cars, what do you think you're going to see?
Well, I'm going to see only red cars. I'm going to be looking out for them, right?
Yeah, red cars literally everywhere. And it's not because there's suddenly more of them, but it's because your brain starts filtering for them, right? So if you swap red cars for what your brain fears, failure, rejection, judgment, uncertainty, if your brain is trying to protect you from judgment, it has to see judgment first. It can't protect you from something that it can't see. So your brain starts scanning for it. It looks in tone, in silence, in anything that could possibly resemble that threat or that fear, right? So on the contrary, though, if you have, say, a fear of uncertainty, that's when you start to become riddled with anxiety. And that's not because something's wrong. It's because your brain doesn't actually know what's around the corner. It can't see. There's not a clear path or plan. So if you fear failure, it'll show you every reason why you shouldn't take the risk. It's your brain trying to help you, but it's kind of doing its job a little bit too well. And the thing is, this wiring didn't start last week, right? It usually comes from something that happened a long time ago. Maybe you were criticized as a kid or punished for getting something wrong, or your brain tagged something like that as unsafe. From there, it built a network. And in neuroscience, we call that Hebb's law. So neurons that fire together, wire together. So if criticism made you feel the same as failure, and then that made you feel the same as rejection, and then that made you feel unsafe for being seen, all of those neurons start firing in sync. And now years later, someone can look at you the wrong way and your body reacts as if you've been humiliated in front of the whole class again. Does that make sense?
Yes, that definitely makes sense. And I had a conversation a few episodes ago with a former high school colleague, Sarah, who's a kinesiologist and a naturopath. And we were actually talking about how certain situations can trigger us from something in our previous experience. And Sarah was using the example of a former manager that really triggered her, and she wasn't sure why she was having this strong emotional reaction. And then when she reflected back, this particular manager reminded her of her mother and her mother's approach. And those previous past experiences then were definitely like impacting, in the present. So I can, definitely relate to everything that you're saying. Many of us who work in professions in which we're helping others, we may have our own experience of trauma or some kind of adversity that we've experienced. How do you see these experiences shaping the way that professionals can show up in their work and lives?
So I'll just be upfront, right? I don't think I've ever met a single professional who doesn't help others in some way, shape, or form. So whether you're a coach, a therapist, a nurse, or a business owner, we're all helping someone. And the people who do it the best, they're the ones who have lived it. They know what it's like to be on the other side of that pain. When we see someone else rising out of it, we start to feel that in our chest, right? That inspirational feeling. And they're the ones who well up when a client says, you've changed something in me. And that's the power of lived experience. But there's a catch to that as well. When your energy isn't managed or your emotional wiring is rooted in fear, you'll unconsciously recreate that same dynamic that you were trying to escape before. So you start giving too much, taking on too much, confusing your worth with how useful you are, or it's inspiring to others when they look at you, but it is quietly costing you internally, it's taxing you. That's when the cracks start to show. You start to feel drained, disconnected, maybe even resentful. You lose that spark that made you want to do all of this in the first place. So you tell yourself it's burnout or boundaries, but it's actually deeper than that. It's not that you don't have boundaries. Some cases, yeah, it is that, but in most of the time it's not that as such. It's that your brain thinks that setting them might disconnect you from love, validation, or that belonging in the first place. So you say yes when you really want to say no. You'll overextend, you overcare, you drown. If you find yourself constantly tired, not loving what you used to love, avoiding conflict, or feeling like you can't find a boundary that feels good, that's a pretty good indication that your limbic system is still running off that old story or something. It's creating the chaos from what you went through.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that in a lot of professionals who do help and support others. They often speak of people pleasing, that I don't want to disappoint anyone, so I'll say yes to the extra client appointment, even though they already have such a significant caseload. They'll just keep saying yes, and then the work piles on, and it can lead to some other difficulties they're having, often burnout, or their own well-being starts to go in a downward spiral as well. I'm sure it's something you see a lot in the work that you do.
Every day.
And something that you've mentioned, Bree, and I believe I also saw it on your website, was failure became your best friend, which is so telling and so impactful. But what actually shifted for you when you stopped seeing failure as a threat and actually as your best friend?
I don't think I've ever met a single person who hasn't feared failure at least some point in their life, or still to this day. So I will explain this in a way that will help them, like with a metaphor. I love metaphors. If if you think about it like this, would you ever judge a baby who was learning to walk and they fell the first few times? No, of course not. And the thing is, a lot of the time when people come through is they're too busy judging themselves to actually see that they're part of the process, right? When a baby is learning how to walk, falling over is literally part of the process of how they learn to balance. That baby is not tagged as a failure just because they fell. So I don't understand sometimes like why people start tagging themselves that way. But I guess like for me, I built Shift, like I literally invented a framework. And honestly, like, do you know how many times I failed before I got it right? Like every version of what I built broke long before it worked. And once you start building something from scratch, literally inventing something that doesn't exist yet, failure has to become your best friend. There's no manual, there's no coach, there's no mentor, there's nothing. It's just you against you. So every time I failed, I had to work out why I failed. And of course that made me cry a lot of the time, but my determination to learn far outweighed my desire to stay stuck where I was. I wanted more for myself. And that's obviously what I teach now, how to stop letting your brain hijack you every single time something doesn't go to plan. Because once you see failure for what it really is, data, direction, feedback, everything else changes. It stops becoming personal. You stop tagging yourself as stupid or all those nasty things that happen inside your head when something doesn't go to plan. And you stop taking it as proof that you're not enough. You start using it as proof that you're still in motion. So when your brain learns that failure isn't danger, it stops shutting you down.
Also that when you fail at something, at least that's evidence that you're actually trying, you're giving something a go. And no one will ever move outside of their comfort zone ever if they see a failure so much that actually prevents them from trying.
Yeah, just see it as learning. If you can always try and position yourself like, I'm not failing, I'm learning. And if you can do that, you'll actually build motivation inside of you rather than tearing yourself down. So it's just a quick reframe that you can do that will just go, okay, like it's not about me failing right now. What else am I learning?
And I'm sure that will resonate with a lot of people listening, in which they may have applied for a job they really wanted and then they weren't successful. And so I hear a lot about that. If someone is starting to realize some of their own patterns, whether it's a fear of failure or some of the limiting beliefs that you've just mentioned, maybe this episode has now helped them develop a little bit more insight. What's one thing that you would like them to know about what's actually possible for them?
The biggest thing I want you to know is that you're not stuck in the patterns. Your brain is literally just protecting you. Especially if you're in the psychological background, you would know about the way that the brain works. If you look up the limbic system, you'll see that it's literally a protective driver, and it's very separate from your prefrontal cortex. So like your thinky brain and your feely brain, that's how I do it. And it's your feely brain going, this data doesn't match, right? So I guess the good news of this is all of that can change, and it can change faster than most people think it can. And when you learn how to work with your brain instead of against it, you stop writing out those emotional highs and the emotional lows, and you stop second guessing yourself, and you stop reacting like everything that's happening at that moment is a threat to you. So what's on the other side of that isn't some perfect emotionless version of you. It's a finely steady, calm, clear, grounded, congruent version of you. So you wake up with peace instead of pressure, or you make decisions that feel congruent.
Something that I ask every guest that I have on the podcast is my signature boundaries question. So I'm going to ask you as well, what's one boundary that you've put in place that helps you protect your personal energy while doing the work that you do?
So my biggest boundary is, first and foremost, I'm a mum, I'm a partner, I'm in the middle of house renovations, I'm a coach that people lean on, and I'm at uni, right? So many different hats, and there's so many different versions of me that need to show up every single day. And my biggest one is that my coaching business is the one that lights me up the most. I get to help people out the most. So I love it, and it provides me with the most amount of energy so I can get on the treadmill and I can swim, and I am innately motivated because I've done that thing that day. But the thing is, my daughter didn't ask to be here. I wanted her here. So every Monday we sit down together, and that's our time. It's mum and bub's time. And, we might go swimming or whatever, but I will always say in my business, it's the one day you can't contact me. It's the one day that I need to show her that my business isn't coming before her. Because every other day of the week, I will drop everything for everyone, but that's the one day I cannot put who I am aside for her. Like, she needs to be my one thing that day. At the end of the day, my boundaries protect my peace. And I only do the things that light me up, and I only talk to the people that light me up. And I live a life where boundaries aren't rules, they're the way that I live. And without them, I think everything else would fall apart.
That's so powerful. And if you didn't have the boundaries, then you wouldn't be able to effectively support all of your clients either, or also be the mum that you really want to be.
Correct. Yeah. And like, I really, 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 really love helping, and, you can't be everyone's hero. And I think there's boundaries that you need to put in place for yourself, but there's also boundaries you need to put in place to protect and help other people too. You can't be everything for everyone.
Yes, that's amazing. I feel like that should be the quote of the episode, that you can't be everything to everyone. That needs to be the quote of the episode. I'll keep that in mind when editing.
I love it.
And Bree, how can people get in contact with you if they want to work with you, or if they want to find out a little bit more? What's the best way they can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. The easiest way is through my website. So breecoulter.com/book with me, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Honestly, if something has hit home for someone who's listening and they're curious about working together, I do have a free clarity call. It is on my website that they can book, and it's not a sales call as such. We can just go through what barriers are popping up for them, and I can help them work out whether or not they are the right fit, or, if I'm the right fit for them.
That's good to know. And you had mentioned before we started recording that you have a bit of a freebie for the listeners.
Yes. So I am currently putting it together now for you. But what I want to do is, I guess, like, one of the biggest barriers when people do come through is they're not quite sure where their emotions are stemming from, right? And I'd love to be able to offer that as a free resource for you and your listeners, and for your business as well, just to, I guess, help people with a bit of reflective journaling. I find that's probably the most powerful way to identify if you're doing it by yourself. And it'll also walk you through a little bit about emotions as well, such as anger actually means someone's crossed a boundary. And it just kind of breaks it down of what your brain and body is actually trying to tell you, to help you get through the other end and work out, okay, this is something that does need to be addressed because it is stemming from my past, or it's just a bad day, or whatever it is. So it'll just really help break down, I guess, what's showing up for you, where it's stemming from. And then you get to choose where you heal and how you heal from there.
Sounds amazing. And I'll put the link to that freebie resource. It will be ready by the time this episode airs. And I'll also put all of your contact details as well in the show notes. So if someone's wanting to either book in with you straight away or organize that non-salesy clarity call, then they'll have all the details. Bree, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. It's been so insightful. I've learned a lot from our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me today. I truly appreciate you. And I hope that everyone listening has learned something or can take away something from this. It would be really good.
Thank you so much for listening to Not Another PD. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague who could use stronger boundaries, less burnout, and more balance. And don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep saying yes less.